there, and welcome to Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cook. This week, our guests include Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette, NDP MLA for Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier Kendra Coombes, and the Liberal Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso, Mike Kelloway. And we're going to tackle several topics on this week's show. For example, how will the federal and provincial budgets affect you and your family in the coming weeks and months? Should Richmond County be more welcoming to food trucks and their operators? And should Richmond County and the town of Port Hawkesbury join forces with Inverness County and Mulgrave to fund a bylaw enforcement officer for all four of these municipal units? We'll also take a look at green hydrogen and green ammonia and how production of these particular products in the Strait area is leading to some changes being proposed for the water supply that serves Port Hawkesbury and the municipality of Richmond's industrial park in Point Tupper. But we begin with a wind energy conference that's taking place in Denmark later this month and is going to have a 3-person contingent from the Strait of Canso. Specifically, Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette and Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, who are co-chairs of the Strait Area Offshore Wind Task Force. They've both been approved by their respective municipal councils to go ahead and make the trip to Copenhagen later this month. Brenda Chisholm-Beaton will be given a travel cap of $3,000 to $5,000 as approved by her municipal council in Port Hawkesbury just last week. There will also be a member of the Cape Breton Partnership who serves as the Innovation and Economic Development Officer for the town of Port Hawkesbury and for the county of Richmond. He'll be attending as part of the Strait Area delegation to WindEurope 2023 as well. But to begin our coverage of this specific topic, let's start with an interview that I conducted just recently with Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. Here we are speaking via Zoom from her office at the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre. Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, thank you for joining us again today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So we have a number of things to talk about, and one of the most notable things is that you have been approved by your town council to go to Copenhagen, to Denmark later this month to participate in the WindEurope 2023 conference. You and Warden Amanda Mombourquette of Richmond County will be attending on behalf of the Strait Area Offshore Wind Task Force and the Economic Development Officer for the two municipalities via the Cape Breton Partnership also attending. So first of all, can you tell me just how it feels to be able to get council support for you to attend this conference on behalf of the town of Port Hawkesbury?
It's certainly very progressive on behalf of our council to see the merit and see this opportunity for what it really is. So kudos to our council for having the foresight to approve this. As we all know, it's really exciting that the Strait area is really one of the pinnacle regions around green renewable energy. And, certainly there's been lots in the news, lots of momentum and conversations happening around green hydrogen, and particularly so lots of excitement both before and after Premier Houston made some target announcements with regard to offshore wind. So here in the Strait, I think we have a lot of work to do around preparing for this emerging industry. And one of the puzzle pieces certainly is going off, to either meet virtually or meeting locally with proponents for offshore wind and green hydrogen. But this opportunity is actually wonderful in the fact that we get to go to Copenhagen and see what's happening on the ground. Just to be able to talk to the proponents that are doing it now in real time and making those critical connections so that A, we can understand best practice, B, understand what have the challenges been so we can avoid those here as we create that enabling environment for this emerging industry and prepare as communities and as municipalities. So it is a absolutely wonderful opportunity from the perspective of learning, taking home critical information, making key connections that could help us on the education and training side of things, that could help us on supply chain, that can help us, understand, certainly what that regulatory framework looks like and what's that critical path to having a prosperous both of, well, green energy economy here. So how do we work as hard as we can to create that enabling environment to make sure that we're maximizing all the benefits, especially locally for our communities. So I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. I'm so excited to attend to represent the town of Port Hawkesbury, and with Warden Mombourquette to represent the Strait of Canso, and just take home all kinds of information and hopefully some connections and leads that we can use going forward.
Now, a moment ago, you had mentioned that Premier Tim Houston had made several references to the Strait area during the announcements that have been made about wind energy, green hydrogen, and green ammonia over the course of the fall. And it's worth pointing out that the reason the Strait Area Offshore Wind Task Force and yourself and Warden Mombourquette are attending is because it was by invitation by the provincial government. So can you talk a bit about that recognition that the Strait is a major player in renewable energy and should be seen on the world stage?
There's no time that I can recall in the history of the Strait, not in my recollection, that we've had this kind of opportunity here in the Strait region. This kind of opportunity for the Strait of Canso Port. And obviously this kind of opportunity for Eastern Nova Scotia and the entire province. So definitely all of the leadership that makes up our Strait of Canso Offshore Wind Task Force. And it really was a grassroots local initiative. We mobilized, we did our homework, we tried our best to understand what this potential opportunity could mean for not only the Strait of Canso, but also for the province, for Atlantic Canada, for the country. And really engaging with the province in terms of, how do we get that critical pathway in place so that we can open the door and welcome industry when they come knocking in terms of, wanting to start laying roots for offshore wind here in Nova Scotia. And certainly we have already seen significant investment for green hydrogen here in the Strait of Canso. Hearing the Premier mention the Strait several times, that's got to be historic in and of itself. So we certainly are proud of the work that the Strait of Canso Task Force has done. So both the Warden and I, as chairs of that task force, I have to just show my gratitude and for all of the hard work that everybody at that table has done to garner the interest of the province, to help mobilize, to talk to all orders of government about this opportunity, and certainly to start preparing and sharing that information with our different communities here in the Strait area and in Cape Breton and Unama'ki. Talking to Unama'ki councils, talking to organizations, and at the end of the day, we have to know what this opportunity means in order to maximize that opportunity and bring those critical benefits to our communities. So if we don't know what is happening and if we don't prepare ourselves for this emerging industry, then and we're not in have a place at the table to be able to take part in some of this decision making, then at the end of the day, those decisions are going to be made for us. So isn't it better to get ready and mobilize as this emerging industry is starting to take form in our region? And that kind of puts us at a place where we can help drive this emerging industry in a way that will benefit our communities. So at the end of the day, I am just super grateful that the province has mobilized around this opportunity in such a way, and it's wonderful. That the Wayne Gretzky quote, it's wonderful that the province sees where the puck is going in terms of net zero and in terms of taking our province where it needs to be with green renewable energy. So definitely kudos to the province on the work that they've done to date.
You'll also be joined by the Innovation and Economic Development Officer for Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County for the Cape Breton Partnership, Martin Thompson. Can you tell me a little bit about Martin Thompson's role in all of this and what role you feel he'll be playing as you folks head to Copenhagen, but also the role that he's been playing in working with the two of you on all this?
Sure. I just wanted to mention that the Cape Breton partnership is covering half of Martin Thompson's expenses, our economic development officer.
Yes.
It's certainly at the invitation of the province. And it's amazing that they're letting us tag along on some of the critical meetings that they have prepared in advance. But in terms of supporting that trip to Copenhagen, it's 50% cost shared by the Cape Breton Partnership via the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network, and also 25% from Richmond and 25% from the town. So yeah, it's really exciting. Martin comes with a wealth of information and experience from Scotland with regard to offshore wind. So we're really excited to have him as our economic development officer. He's come into it just a short time ago, and he has hit the ground running. So we're really excited to be able to lean into his experience and his knowledge. And he has wasted no time to familiarize himself with the Strait of Canso and our comparative advantages here. That really kind of sets the stage for us to be an apex for offshore wind and green hydrogen here in the Strait of Canso. So really excited to participate with Martin and the Warden, and also some other members from the Cape Breton Partnership that will be attending as well. I think it's important that we are able to, not only go there to promote our region, but like I mentioned earlier, just to take back some of that critical information in terms of best practice, lessons learned, and also make those critical connections so that we have a Rolodex of business cards. So for once, we're working on supply chain and how do we kind of build up or train local suppliers to feed into that supply chain, or how do we attract supply chain proponents here to the Strait to be able to have a fulsome participation in this emerging industry. So it's a really exciting opportunity.
How do you feel about being able to work on this with Mayor Chisholm-Beaton and the two of you being able to be part of the team going together with a representative of the Cape Breton Partnership as well?
I think it's really critical for the Strait area to have a strong representation when the province is making an effort to send a delegation to a conference like this, where there are going to be industry, government, community, training institution partners. Like this is a huge opportunity for us to be able to make some inroads. The province is there obviously representing Nova Scotia. They're inviting us because they see the opportunity in the Strait. It's critical for us to be able to take that local knowledge and be able to communicate it to the folks who would potentially be, future investors in our region or future partners in, this emerging industry around clean fuels and clean energy in the Strait area. So I'm really pleased that, Port Hawkesbury Council is taking advantage of this opportunity for us to be a huge part of the provincial delegation heading there.
And I just wanted to ask you as well on this. During the council meeting on Tuesday night, Mayor Chisholm-Beaton suggested that even with the major opportunities that exist for Point Tupper Industrial Park, for the Strait in general, in terms of wind energy, green hydrogen, there could be some opportunity as well for Port Hawkesbury officials to speak about anything from waterfront development to housing development to other possible development issues within the town. Do you see that as a possibility for Richmond County as well, that even as you are there specifically to discuss the wind energy possibilities and the green hydrogen developments coming, that this could be a marketing opportunity for Richmond County as a whole?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about. What our interest is really, when we talk about developing this sector in this region, we are talking about not just the primary developers of hydrogen or wind developers. We're talking about an entire supply chain of business opportunities and to your point, housing investment opportunities. Like we are talking about creating a game-changing sector that will address all of the parts. We don't want to be trying to always depend on other international suppliers of goods and services to be able to service us, activity that's happening in the Strait. We want to make sure that as much local benefit lands here as possible. And I do think, we can take some lessons from what happened in the oil and gas sector. A lot went right. A lot didn't go that great for rural Nova Scotia, right? So, we need to make sure that we are, we're learning those lessons, taking the best practices from what happened there and applying them in a way that will mean the most benefit possible lands in our rural areas. Because we know that without a strong rural Nova Scotia, Nova Scotia isn't really that strong, right? So we're really committed to that vision. I believe the province is committed to that vision. They see great value in making sure that the various regions are economically and socially strong, that we have the resources to push projects like this forward. And so we have appreciated their support in this sector development in particular, and we're going to continue to work with them every chance we get, and with the federal government. This will be an all hands on deck effort. We're talking about transformative change for our communities. We're talking about some pretty large projects, but we're also talking about the small businesses that can serve those pretty large projects. So, you really need to think about it as, this is the start of a brand new game for us. And when we think about community benefit, really think about more and better jobs for people. We think about, more investment in housing. We think about more social well-being types of activity, better infrastructure. So it's a whole gamut of things that we're considering. But I think it's really critical that we make sure that the Strait is strongly represented in these circles, because this is where the opportunity is, right? The opportunity that's going to come first is not going to be in another part of Nova Scotia or another part of Atlantic Canada. It's going to be here. So it's really critical that we are the local face of point of contact for these industry players.
Now, it's not just at this conference in Denmark where there's activity happening on the green hydrogen and green ammonia front. As a matter of fact, Richmond County and the town of Port Hawkesbury have co-signed a letter to Nova Scotia's Public Works Minister, Kim Masland. That letter is asking for an adjustment to be made at the Landry Lake water supply, which is located in Richmond County, but provides water for residents and commercial customers in Port Hawkesbury, as well as the heavy industries in the Point Tupper Industrial Park. A reservoir used to serve this particular water supply in Landry Lake. It's known as the Little River Reservoir, and it was in operation from 1968 until 1991, when it was decommissioned because of a reduction of economic activity that required this extra water service. However, Richmond County and the town of Port Hawkesbury both feel that recent developments in green hydrogen and green ammonia in Point Tupper could warrant the Little River Reservoir being resurrected. How do Richmond Warden Amanda Mombourquette and Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton feel? Let's find out. Town Council and the County of Richmond would like to see the Public Works Department get the Little River Reservoir going again. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of getting this up and running once more, especially in terms of green hydrogen development?
Absolutely. So our watershed obviously is of critical importance to both industry and the town of Port Hawkesbury, and actually a portion of Inverness County. Port Hastings is also utilizes Landry Lake for their drinking water. This is certainly, when I mentioned earlier the comparative advantages we have here in the Strait area, access to water is one of those huge comparative advantages. So part of ensuring that we can meet the demand for all of our water users and also the green hydrogen proponents as well, we will have to make sure that we can increase the capacity of that watershed in a way where we can welcome green hydrogen proponents and still make sure that we have that critical resource for use locally as well. There's certainly lots of water, and we want to make sure that resource is going to be used now, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years down the road. So we definitely want to make sure that we are being responsible with that watershed and responsible with this water resource in a way that we are thinking about the future, but we are also creating an enabling environment for the potential economic development. So around green hydrogen. So it is a bit of a balance, but at the end of the day, being able to expand that watershed and work with the province to do so, I think that's definitely a right step, a right step in the right direction, I should say, for the future for green hydrogen here in the Straits.
Your thoughts on making this move and bringing the province on board to get it back online?
Yeah, no, it's time for us to be working, with the province on this, and we have been working with them for some time. Again, they have been very supportive, but our primary concern will always need to be in protection of our water supply, making sure that the people of the town of Port Hawkesbury have an adequate supply of good quality water. We have an obligation on with our water supply now, with PHP as well. We need to make sure that if we're looking at projects that are going to require additional water in order for them to be able to, develop and grow, that we have an adequate supply to do so. So I think, in the past, these watersheds were all connected. We're looking forward to working with the province to reconnect them. If you look at, when the old heavy water plant was here, and Gulf and all of these other industries, there was a huge supply of water because of the connectedness of those systems, and it was a sustainable supply of good quality water. So that's what we want to make sure we're reinstating, so that we're ready to be able to grow according to the needs and the opportunity ahead of us, right? But number one, our concern does need to be around the protection of that quality water supply.
This particular reservoir, the Little River Reservoir, was launched in 1969 to handle an economic boom, mainly in the oil and gas sector, but also among heavy industries throughout Point Tupper, throughout that industrial park. Shut down in 1991 with shifting economic times. How does it feel to be the mayor of Port Hawkesbury at a time where you can go to the provincial government and say, we may be about to have a major economic boom again. We need this reservoir back. What does that feel like for you?
It feels pretty darn good. And also it feels great to be part of a council and to be part of a region of councils that have the foresight and the vision to be able to create and maximize our economic opportunity. I know when you think about the roles that municipalities play, it's more than just, fixing potholes and, making sure that garbage or solid waste is picked up at the curbside on the right day and at the right time. It's about preparing for the future. It's about, planting seeds for trees that are going to create economic opportunity for many, many years to come. So at this juncture, I would say that it's the fact that we're in this position is testimony of all the hard work both of our councils have done over the past several years. So hopefully more development and more opportunity to come in the next couple of years, as well as we finish up our term into 2024, and what kind of exciting opportunities may come in the next term for the next two councils.
How does it feel to be the warden of Richmond County, now signing off on a letter like this saying, look, we could be having the biggest economic boom and industrial boom happening here in over 30 years. How does it feel to be the warden of Richmond County and being able to enter into these kind of discussions with the province at this time?
Well, it's a great question, Adam. And, I'll be really honest with you. I kind of operate in a state of incredible excitement, but also terror on the side, because there's a lot at stake here. We know that we have so much opportunity ahead of us, but, we're so fortunate that we have councils in place and staff in place who can respond to this opportunity. I mean, it's, the stars, I feel, are aligning for us in many ways. And I tend to be an optimist at heart, but we do need to kind of make sure that we understand the reality of what we're dealing with as well. And so, these projects that are being proposed, are going to contribute to our climate imperative to get off of fossil fuels, and not just locally here, but in a global way. And how incredibly exciting is it for us to be a huge player in that effort to get us to a cleaner, greener energy economy. It's almost incomprehensible for me sometimes, but we're going to do everything we can to be responsive. And I think, this water supply matter is going to be a huge part of it. And the fact that we have the support of, like I said, local government staff, as well as the provincial government, it's a huge deal. So, stay tuned for more on that. But I've been telling people, I think we can give ourselves permission to be really optimistic about the future of Richmond County right now, because, we're moving forward in a way that's, environmentally sustainable. It's, it meets our climate needs. It helps our political allies. Like this is big. This is a big deal for us, right? It's a big deal for the planet, really. So if more communities can be thinking this way and taking advantage of these opportunities, I have lots of hope for the future. So it's pretty exciting times, but just a little bit of terror on the side. So
we'll return to municipal politics here on Roundtable in just a moment. But right now, I thought it was a good idea to have some discussion about the federal budget that was recently presented in the House of Commons by Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. Here is Liberal MP and Cape Breton-Canso Representative Mike Kelloway with his thoughts on how the budget could affect you and your family over the coming weeks and months. What do you feel are the personal highlights of the budget that your constituents should know all about, and what makes you feel like there'll be some progress in Cape Breton-Canso over the next 12 months and beyond because of this budget?
Well, it's a great question. And I look at this budget from multiple pillars, right? Multiple themes. One's around affordability. One is around healthcare. One is around the green economy and investing in green industry. And of course, then there's the middle class and middle class jobs. When I look at this budget, if you just looked at the health component of this budget alone, if it was just the health piece in the budget, that would be a significant budget. But we've added so many more elements onto affordability, and doing this within a fiscal framework that recognizes that the debt and deficit have to come down. But I will look to one particular item, healthcare. So if you look at the number one issue, when I ran in 2019 federally, and I know this is provincially too, it was healthcare. In 2021, it's healthcare. The number one issue among those in my riding, it's healthcare. So in this budget, what we've seen is transformational funding that will go to the province of Nova Scotia. So if you look at it, I think it's around close to $200 billion over the next 10 years will be spent on healthcare. $5 billion over the next 10 years in Nova Scotia alone, on top of the funding it already gets. So what is that going to do? That's going to enable the province, which is responsible for healthcare and the administration of healthcare, to look at things like doctor retention, doctor recruitment, look at PCW salaries, look at rural models of healthcare, looking at funding more health practitioners and physician assistants. So it is a significant infusion of money over the next 10 years that will be going to the province of Nova Scotia. So that's number one. Number two is the dental care initiative. So with this extension of last year we started the dental care program. With this second phase, we're looking at 9 million people. 9 million people that are going to receive dental care. And I fundamentally believe that we're coming close, and it's going to happen, I think, that we're going to have a very, very serious discussion, because there are multiple parties that are focusing on how their approach would manifest in terms of healthcare. We have those that believe that we need to invest in public healthcare, that you should receive healthcare not because of your credit card, but because of your health card. And then there is a camp that believes that we need to infuse a lot of private healthcare into the system. And I think this is a debate that's going to be local, regional, and national in scope. For me, this is a significant move forward. The federal government making this investment into Nova Scotia healthcare. Fundamentally, the leaders on healthcare are the province. But what I want to say here, I think it's important to recognize that we've had strong leadership on healthcare in terms of understanding that we're in a crisis. No, it's not a healthcare challenge. It's a healthcare crisis. And we all have stories that we could populate this discussion alone on. But I want to give a special shout out to Prime Minister Trudeau and Minister Freeland, Minister LeBlanc, and Minister Duclos. But I also want to give a special shout out to Premier Houston and people like Trevor Boudreau and Minister Thompson, the health minister, who have really stepped up to the plate to say we have a significant problem. We all believe in healthcare. We all believe in public healthcare. We need to invest, and we need to invest now. So the budget needs to pass for those monies to be actualized in Nova Scotia on the ground, investing in rural healthcare. So you have the government of Canada that's supporting it. It looks like the NDP will support it, which is great. Unfortunately, we have the Conservatives who are voting against healthcare, voting against the infusion of healthcare. That's their choice, and that's their ideology. But I think at the end of the day, Canadians want us to spend money and make strategic investments in healthcare.
Now, you brought up that the NDP is going to be supporting this particular budget, and obviously a big reason that the party was willing to enter into an agreement with the government to support it in a minority situation was the arrival of a new national dental program. Now that that's come through, do you get the sense that the party will be supporting your Liberal government through the foreseeable future? They talked about 2025 as the deadline for that. Do you think this dental plan helps solidify that support and allows your government to continue to run the affairs of Canada for the next 2 years?
Well, I think it helps, for sure. When you're in a minority government, anything can happen. We've seen throughout history in Western democracies how sometimes a mistake by a particular party or a whip in government, if a whip doesn't count the votes, there could be an election. But let me say this. The agreement, the supply agreement, is one that's important for Canadians. Now, we believe as a government that there is much more work to be done in the coming months, in the coming years. So we're looking at coming out of certainly coming out of inflation. We're seeing the inflation rates drop a little bit, but the price of food's, still high. And so we need a government, in my opinion, and I think the NDP understands this, that is not going to look to austerity to get us out of the inflationary measures that were brought by COVID and by the war in Ukraine. That we can invest in Canadians while at the same time, diminish the debt and deficit. Now, that's my belief. My belief is that we have a lot of commonalities between us and the NDP. Now, there's a lot of differences too. We have an eye to investing in Canadians while also being fiscally responsible, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And dental care is a shared goal. It's a shared goal of both parties, but it's a goal for Canadians. And Canadians want to see government work. And I don't buy the messaging from people that say, well, the NDP and the Liberals are working together, and isn't that a shame? No, Canadians expect people in government, people in opposition to work together, and especially in a minority government. And when we're doing that, good things happen for Canadians. Case in point, we're looking at a transformational budget that focuses on health for Nova Scotians, number one. Number two, dental care for Nova Scotians. Number three, a grocery rebate for Nova Scotians, for example. And also, in our part of the world, in Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia, with the green tax credit and our focus as an island and in northeastern Nova Scotia on green hydrogen, this is also potential for economic growth and establishment of middle-class jobs. So you can walk and chew gum, as they say, at the same time, and that's what we're doing as a government. We want to do more, and my hope is that the NDP will hear Canadians and hear that we need to focus on investing in Canadians and making strategic and smart investments. We need to make life more affordable while inflation is still high, and at the same time, we need to work together in achieving goals. The the easy answer among some people is just, throw one word answers out there and get a video clip.
Mm.
The hard thing is about working together. Leadership is about, what character do you have in a crisis? Well, you can blame everyone else for it, or you can say we need to work together as Team Canada on it. And I think that relationship has proven itself to be helpful for Canadians. And as long as it's helpful for Canadians, my hope is that it remains strong. But we're focused on Canadians. We're focused on making life more affordable. And again, healthcare. Adam, I look at it this way. And people I think are getting to know me over the last 4 years. And they know I'm not an ideologue. I'm not left wing, right wing. I'm about the riding. I'm about people. And, when you look at this budget, when I look at it from a healthcare perspective alone, if you vote against this budget, you're voting against $5 billion coming to Nova Scotia for healthcare. That's something to think about.
Well, I wanted to pick up on the comment that you'd made about the grocery rebate. And I know the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, has been talking about how important it is to be able to make these measures available for Canadians in times of inflation, in times of rising grocery prices. Your thoughts on how what we're seeing in the budget for this specific issue can help out people in Cape Breton-Canso who are trying to make those choices? What do I pay for? How do I pay for it with the prices going up? How does the budget help there?
Well, I mean, you brought up the grocery rebate. And if we look at the grocery rebate, we estimate that that's going to help 11 million Canadians. That's a significant number. It's like when you say 9 million Canadians are going to be impacted by dental care, 11 million Canadians are going to be impacted by the grocery rebate. And the reality is that you go to any grocery store in any area in the riding, in the region, in Canada, it's almost prohibitive, if not actually prohibitive, for people to eat healthy. And people cannot and should not, and we should never accept that people have to make a decision between eating and keeping the lights on. That's not who we are. We are what we saw in COVID. We came together. We helped each other, neighbor to neighbor, stranger to friend, friend to stranger, stranger to stranger. This investment alone is helping people, with cold hard cash to be able to just stretch a little bit further their dollar to enable the individuals. So if you're a senior, you're an individual senior, you're going to be eligible here. If you're a family of 4, you're going to be able to actualize this money and see it in your pocketbook or in your wallet and be able to help your family. We're about helping people, and the basic human right of being able to afford quality meals, even during a time of worldwide inflation. The minister recognized that, and I'm very proud of the grocery rebate. I know what I'm also proud of. I'm proud that the actual word grocery rebate is in the terminology, so people can identify what it's for, and people can use it for the appropriate reasons to go out and buy items to sustain themselves. And so, that is another great example of I think a government that has listened, while at the same time making sure that we follow a fiscal kind of framework that is robust and strong, that does reduce the debt and deficit. But again, my approach, and I firmly believe this, is that if you want to cut costs, you do not follow the plan of austerity, massive layoffs, cutting this, cutting that. What you need to do is be more effective, more strategic, and focus on the people that need it the most. And that's what this grocery rebate does.
One last question on the budget for you, Mike, and that is on a point that you made earlier about the green tax credit that is available in this new budget, should it pass. And you also brought up green hydrogen and green ammonia development. That is certainly something that is happening here in the Strait area. So your thoughts on the timing of this green tax credit and the idea that it is available at a time when renewable energy is starting to take center stage in your riding and especially in the Strait?
Well, you named it. I mean, you said the Strait area. And for me, one of the hubs the potential hubs for green hydrogen for domestic use in terms of renewable energy, but also for exporting renewable energy to the world, is in the Strait area, is in the Quad Counties, is in Guysborough County, parts of Antigonish, Richmond, Inverness, and the CBRM too, for that matter, can benefit from a lot of what I'm seeing and a lot that I'm involved with different companies that are really focused and tangible companies on green hydrogen. And it's not just one company, it's multiple companies that have a lot of street credentials, a lot of business credentials. So in our budget, we have, we want to make sure that we follow the green way, as it were, in terms of focusing on investing in renewables. So what we did, and it's my hats off to people like Seamus O'Regan and Minister O'Regan and Minister Wilkinson and Minister Guilbeault. They worked with industry and people that are in the unions to focus on a tax credit that is going to benefit companies to set up shop, that focuses on set-asides, that entices hiring people locally around green hydrogen, and for that matter, offshore and inshore wind. So that's a tax credit that will be available for companies in our neck of the woods. And let me say this. We have, I think, and I think evidence will prove this to be the case in the coming year, we have a substantial potential to play a significant role in changing the narrative in economic development in Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia with green hydrogen. It's not going to happen in day 1 or day 5. It's going to take some time. That said, companies around the world are looking to Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia with respect to the potential for green hydrogen. And so we have a need locally, regionally, nationally. We also have a geopolitical need in terms of the need to get off fossil fuels, to get on to renewable energy that is affordable, accessible, and I think the budget speaks to that. And I would be lying to you, Adam, and to the viewers if I say when I was reading the budget, as everyone was reading it for the first time, and I was looking for certain things. I knew healthcare was in there because we announced that previously. Dental care, great. Affordability, we saw measures in there that are addressing that. But one of the untold stories in this budget, from a Cape Breton or northeastern Nova Scotia standpoint, is the focus on green energy, and I believe we can dock up to that as an island, as a province, from northeastern Nova Scotia right down to Glace Bay, Nova Scotia.
We appreciate you giving us your thoughts on the new federal budget and on the issues surrounding it. Thanks so much for joining me here on Tail Community Television today.
Thank you for having me, as always, Adam.
Some of you watching in Richmond County right now may have seen and even purchased items from food trucks over the past 5 years. They've come to communities like Point Michaud and also set up shop at festivals and events like St. Peter's Pirate Days and the Codstock concert event in Arishat. So, municipal officials are wondering if the county can be even more welcoming to food trucks as the weather gets warmer. However, some brick-and-mortar restaurant operators and similar enterprises are worried that this could cut into their own revenue. The discussion recently reached the council table at Richmond County, so I decided to ask Warden Amanda Mombourquette what she thinks about the food truck discussion, especially in terms of a similar debate that took place in the town of Port Hawkesbury only 7 years ago. Here's my conversation with Warden Mombourquette on the food truck subject right now. Why did you feel it was important to have this particular discussion at this time? Have you been getting requests from those wanting to operate food trucks in different parts of the county? Is this something that's been building over the past few weeks or even the past couple of years? Why now?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Adam. And I do think it's kind of something that's been building over the last couple of years. And certainly, especially pre-COVID, as our festivals started to boom more and more and more in the county, and we would see food trucks coming in, to service those festivals. And it's so wonderful because, there's business, for our bricks and mortar food establishments, business for these, mobile food establishments. And, we were really seeing some success, I think, around that kind of thing. So the pandemic hit, things slowed down, and now we're starting, as we get into the recovery, we're starting to see some additional interest. However, I did hear some concerns, from some of our, bricks and mortar establishments in the county that, we need to think about whether or not there's a level playing field, for the folks who have an establishment, they pay property taxes, they contribute to, our baseball teams and our sports teams and et cetera, right? Compared to, a more mobile establishment that maybe doesn't have some of those responsibilities. So that's really the reason that I brought it to council, because I do think that variety is the spice of life, that, the more offerings that we have here in Richmond County, the more that we'll attract more people from outside of our county to spend time and money and have fun, work and play here, So I'm a big believer in that activity will drive more investment and more people into our county. But at the same time, want to kind of respect the folks who have been here with us through the decades, and who are, who have been mainstays in our communities, and make sure that they feel like their concerns are addressed too. So that's why I brought it forward for discussion. I think it's a great opportunity to have, more food trucks and more offerings in our county. But I also think that we have to have kind of a measured and thoughtful approach in terms of how we do that. So I brought it forward to council for discussion, and I'm really pleased that it's been referred over to our bylaw and policy committee, because that includes, input from a member of the public, and we'll be able to have sort of take a deeper dive on that conversation and hopefully come up with a solution or, a plan that it has some, a level playing field and kind of some fairness built in for everybody.
Now, as you mentioned, this is something that's been building over a couple of years. And even prior to the pandemic, we did see food trucks, most famously at an event within your district, St. Peter's Pirate Days. We've seen a number of food trucks gather there. There was some discussion as well that food trucks have been experimented with at the Codstock event that takes place in Ayrshire in July. So there's some precedent for bringing these enterprises in. What do you take away from those particular experiences, and what do you feel the other councillors are taking away from that as well as you have this discussion now?
Yeah, I mean, another great example, Adam, is, I know that there's been a food truck present down at Point Michaud Beach, the last couple of seasons. And like I said, I really think it's a great opportunity. You think about a place, especially, where there maybe are no other services around, like, what a fantastic fit, I'm thinking of the beach in particular, but then, you think about Pirate Days, and, the food truck piece is such a huge attraction for folks because it's, it's fun and it's different, and it's, it kind of creates this buzz in the community. And there are so many people at these events like Pirate Days, like Codstock, that there's no way that we would be able to service them all with the establishments that we have here currently. So I think, when councillors are, I anticipate when councillors are having this discussion, they'll be thinking of both sides of that, like, how do we grow our tourism economy? How do we make sure that the events that we have here are well serviced, and how do we also ensure that the establishments we have here continue to be well supported? So it's really a balancing act. We get that. But I'm really hopeful we can come up with kind of a happy medium to move forward.
Now, I noticed in the discussion that took place at council, you mentioned Point Michaud Beach. And I mean, Councillor Brent Sampson, representing District 5, made the point that if a food truck is at Point Michaud Beach, there's not a restaurant that it's competing at, a brick and mortar establishment for several kilometers. And Councillor Michael Digdon from Almadam making the point that when a food truck shows up at Codstock, that's usually after 9 p.m. and most of the restaurants, if not all of them around Almadam, are closed down. Their kitchens are shut down for the night. So it's a matter of trying to have that jigsaw puzzle piece that fits in where there is an existing hole and doesn't directly compete with other areas. Yeah,
and I mean, I think there's no possible way for us to eliminate competition, you know what I mean? And I don't think we would want to do that either. I think competition makes us all strive to be better. I know it certainly does for me, but I do think that there are some extenuating circumstances that we'll have to consider, just as you've just stated, Adam. I mean, there's no question we're a rural community, and to have some of these services, in places where they wouldn't normally be, it's a huge asset. It's a huge draw for people, so instead of spending 2 hours at the beach, you can spend the day there, right?
Yes.
If you're like me and not organized enough to take food with you, right? so I think there. Exactly. We'll have to really consider those things in our discussion, I think.
Now, there is some precedent for this discussion within the Strait area, and as a matter of fact, right next door in Port Hawkesbury, 2016, 2017, there was some concern over food trucks making their way into Port Hawkesbury, and the municipal council that was elected in 2016 made some efforts to have a more progressive licensing fee policy for food trucks in that area that made them more welcome and more accepted than the previous administration did. So, do you take anything away from all of that? Are you looking to Port Hawkesbury and saying, well, they managed to make it work? How can we learn from them?
Honestly, we'll be looking across the province to see what are some best practices out there, because there's no need. I don't think there's any need for us to be reinventing the wheel on this. You know, I know there are communities that have had great success, you know, I'm sure with this, and then others who have struggled more so. And you know, our feeling, and I think we, you know, even instructed staff in that manner. We requested that they start to look at other models across the province, and certainly Port Hawkesbury would be one of them. You know, we don't want to come up with with a plan that's punitive in any way, because we really do want to welcome these services and these food trucks into our county. But at the same time, you know, we'll have to figure out what will be a right size kind of fit for Richmond County. So.
All right. So where do we go from here as we wind up this part of the discussion? Obviously, the warmer weather is coming, despite the snow that is out on the ground as we have this conversation this morning. We will see the spring and the summer. We will see the return of food trucks as they really get revved up to serve people. Does this issue come back to the council table soon? Does it continue for a few weeks privately? What happens now?
So no discussions will happen privately. They'll happen in our next public policy, bylaw and policy committee meeting. And when that committee feels that we've gotten to a place where we can make a recommendation on policy back to council, you'll see it come back to the council table. So, I mean, it may take another couple of months, but, you know, we're not just planning for this coming year, we're planning for years in the future too, because we do see a future for tourism and hospitality businesses to grow here in our county. And that's going to be, you know, that's going to be part of our plan.
Some of you may recall that over the last few months, Richmond Municipal Council and the town of Port Hawkesbury have been in discussions with the town of Mulgrave and Inverness County to see if a bylaw enforcement officer could serve all 4 municipal units and cut down on costs for having an individual officer enforcing bylaws in individual communities. Well, these discussions are still ongoing, and Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton had an update for me on the whole subject when I spoke to her just last week. Here's what the mayor had to say about where the talks for a shared bylaw enforcement officer are going right now. Can you tell us how you feel these talks are going and where we go from here in terms of being able to share a bylaw enforcement officer?
Sure. So I guess I'll start off by giving a bit of the Port Hawkesbury Town Council perspective. So certainly since I ran for council way back in 2012, as I guess really eager to learn about municipal government and, you know, how to be impactful doing the work as a councillor. One thing I remember hearing at doors was, you know, all of the bylaws that we are responsible for in updating. However, you know, why aren't they being enforced? So it's certainly something I'm sure that definitely probably, yeah, I would say other councils have the similar experience. So in terms of how do you create a sustainable position? Because it depends. I mean, if you like a bylaw enforcement officer for the town of Port Hawkesbury may be a very sporadic kind of a part-time job. And also there is going to be a cost incurred for doing that. So it does make sense that this kind of a position could be considered as a regional position. We are very familiar with the regional work of the Eastern District Planning Commission, and that works quite well. So we build a team around planning that we share regionally, and you know, is this something we can do around bylaw enforcement as well? So what was discussed around the council table at our meeting was certainly homework. So it was, what do our council members feel are some critical pieces that we would like to see in terms of enforcement? So certainly issues around parking that I'm sure everyone in the town of Port Hawkesbury, and even visitors to the town of Port Hawkesbury, they get, people just parking along the side of the curb. Anybody who needs to access entryways to businesses, with wheelchairs. When you have a car that's parking right next to that ramp that you need to access to even get in the building, or snow. We have major snowstorms, and we have our public works crew that are clearing roads. It's illegal to park on the side of the road, so that we want to make sure that we're clearing our roads appropriately. So you can't do that when there's cars in the way. So if we had a bylaw enforcement officer that were ticketing, and believe me, a person's only going to get a ticket once, and they're probably not going to do it again. You don't like getting hit in their wallet. So bylaw enforcement is as much a deterrent, and really in encouraging citizens to follow the bylaws that are laid out in the town of Port Hawkesbury, but also in Mulgrave, in Inverness, and Richmond. And certainly it would make a lot more sense if we had bylaws, that the bylaws would have teeth and be enforceable. So it definitely is a great idea. At the end of the day, there are a couple of challenges that will have to be considered, before we land on a place where we can say either yes or no, let's move forward with this. The one issue that was discussed around our council table was variability for bylaws between the differing municipalities. So noise bylaw may look differently in Port Hawkesbury than it does in Mulgrave, but that also presents, like, every challenge is a potential opportunity. So could there be a little bit of a regional modernization exercise that could happen, so that we can create a little bit of consistency between some kind of low-hanging fruit type bylaws, so that people are treated similarly, whether it's a noise infraction in Mulgrave or a noise infraction in the town. So that's something that could be considered. And the other consideration, of course, is if we start with one bylaw officer, where do you want to start in terms of enforceable bylaws? And is it parking? And also our chief administrative officer, Terry Doyle, also let us know that some bylaws are enforceable by the RCMP as well.
Yes.
So it's just about kind of working out those details, determining, okay, these are three enforceable type of criteria that all of the participating municipalities want to agree on, get to a starting point, and maybe you build into it from there. Because I'm sure, for example, using Eastern District planning, I'm sure it started, in a very small scale and then kind of grew out from there. So this could take a similar trajectory. So maybe it starts with one bylaw officer, maybe, depending on how things evolve, it could develop into more. But at the end of the day, it's another example on how we can work together as municipalities to better serve the citizens that we represent, and to do it together.
Now, I just wonder, where do the talks go from here? And do they involve Port Hawkesbury taking a look at its own bylaws as well? I know there was some discussion around the council table that perhaps some bylaws within the town could be streamlined to line up a little more with some of the other municipalities involved in that talks. Is that part of the process going forward?
I'm not 100% sure how the next steps may look. Councillor Jason O'Coin is our touch point for a lot of these conversations. So we rely on him to come back and give council an update in terms of next steps. But right now, the exercise we had before us was to determine some of the council's priorities. So what are the priorities for the town of Port Hawkesbury? So the other proponents representing their councils will take back to the conversation going forward. What were all the priorities in Mulgrave? What are the priorities in Richmond? And what are the priorities in Inverness? So I can't really allude to next steps at this point. But I guess at the end of the day, there has to be, enough of a launch pad in terms of something one bylaw officer could offer in terms of coverage for all 4 municipalities in a way that makes sense. So we have to get some basic agreement in terms of, okay, if this is a priority that lands from all of the councils in all 4 of the municipalities, then we have a starting point. So at the end of the day, those conversations will continue. And if it makes sense, then it's something we certainly would be willing to try.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing how those conversations continue over the next little while. But in the meantime, we've covered a lot of ground here, Mayor Chisholm-Beaton, and I thought we might, and I appreciate that. Did you want to add anything else about any of this just before we wrap up here?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to share some of these really exciting opportunities that are happening at both the town of Hawkesbury in Richmond County and the Strait of Canso overall. Really proud to be part of this region, proud of the emerging opportunities and figuring out ways that we can seize those opportunities together. I think that it's going to make us a much stronger region for it.
And we'll wrap up this week's edition of Roundtable on a different note. Actually, it's a music note. You may recall that over the years we've had NDP MLA Kendra Coombes join us here on Roundtable to discuss issues that her party feels are important not just to people in her own riding of Cape Breton Centre-Whitney Pier, but to all Cape Bretoners, including our viewers here in the Strait area. Well, it turns out that Kendra Coombes has a special musical philosophy in terms of how she and her family approach issues of social justice, such as those raised in the recent provincial budget. Here's a little snippet of my conversation with Kendra Coombes in which she talks about a very special song that has guided her at times like this.
In our tradition, we call it bread and roses. People
okay.
need bread,
Mm-hmm.
but they also need roses. It comes from an old Union song called Bread and Roses.
Okay.
Look it up. It's on YouTube.
I want to find that now because I've never heard that before.
Yeah,
what a great metaphor.
Yeah, it was women who were working in a factory.
Yeah.
I had a strike back in, I think it was the 20s. And this was their call, bread and roses.
Oh, wow.
It's bread that we fight for, but we fight for roses too.
That's very cool. I am going to look that up. I appreciate, apart from everything else, I appreciate that I get to spend time with you just to learn that. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. You have a great day.
And just for the record, I did check out Bread and Roses on YouTube. I'm quite fond of the version that Judy Collins recorded back in the mid-70s. You might want to take a listen yourself. And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable. Special thanks to my interview guests this week, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, Amanda Mombourquette, Mike Kelloway, and Kendra Coombes. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen over the past hour, or you'd just like to make a suggestion for a future edition of Roundtable, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly, or you can contact Tellil Community Television in Arishat. And be sure to follow Tellil on social media. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you once again for joining me for this week's edition of Roundtable. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.